This is the Polygon Helios. And to all you acute observers out there, you might have realized by now that it actually is not, in fact, a mountain bike. But we at Bikes Online love bikes of all shapes and sizes. So when I had the opportunity to jump on a different type of bike, I took it. There was just one problem. I know absolutely nothing about road biking. Oh, I knew it happened. Being thrown straight into the roadie shark tank has made for some pretty laughable moments, but might actually prove to be somewhat educational too. So over the past month, I've made it my mission to learn everything I can about not just the equipment, but the sport and culture of road cycling itself. So if you're new to road cycling or interested in maybe trying it out, you've come to the right place. Now, first things first, I had to get to know my bike. Bikes Online spoiled me, and this is the Polygon Helios A7, a full carbon performance road bike designed to compete at the highest level. Thanks in large part to the carbon wheels, the entry-level A7 weighs in at just under 17 pounds. If you're looking for something at a lower price level, Bikes Online has got you covered there too. The Polygon Stratos starts at a more affordable price point and still features high-quality Shimano components and a more endurance-focused geometry. But purchasing your road bike is just the first step. Similar to mountain biking, roadies use their own specific protective equipment and attire. I usually don't wear a chamois while mountain biking, but for the hours I plan to spend in the saddle at a time on the road bike, I knew I didn't want to forsake the extra cushion. I also invested in a lightweight and breathable road-specific helmet, jersey, and fingerless gloves. Lastly, I chose to use clipless road pedals and shoes. Entity, Polygon's component brand, makes some super nice carbon fiber clipless pedals that would help me generate maximum power without adding any unnecessary weight to my bike. Seeing as I don't plan to do any night riding, I haven't installed any lights or reflectors, but that is something I might want to consider even in the daytime. But if you're planning to ride after the sun goes down, make sure you check out bikesonline.com for their high visibility riding gear, lights, and reflectors. All right, so we got all the equipment and gear out of the way. So the next step's gotta be going on a ride, right? Well, not quite, because the next step is actually to get what's called a bike fitting. In the mountain biking world, most riders simply buy the bike in their size, set the saddle, and get on the trail. Any other micro adjustments are usually made later on in response to personal preference or discomfort. But roadies are a little more proactive than that and tend to do pretty thorough bike fittings right off the bat, which makes sense given that they're in pretty much the same seated position the entire ride. The folks over at Bikes Online assured me that the bike fitting wasn't as intimidating as it seems. And in fact, they have an easy to follow bike fit video to help get this done without forking the cash for a custom fit at a bike shop. Turns out they were right, and in less than 20 minutes, I had adjusted my saddle height and position to best suit my limb lengths. Thankfully, the rest of the cockpit, the stem length and bar height, felt good out of the box. If you do need additional help, head down to your local bike shop where they'll be sure to help you out. So with my fresh kit of shiny Lycra, gear, and the bike fitting, I was finally ready to get out on my first ride. One of my biggest fears starting out was sharing the trail with hikers, the occasional horse, to sharing the road with all these fast-moving cars. Thankfully, my town of Bend, Oregon has a pretty extensive system of bike paths, so I opted to start there. If you're just getting started, I'd highly recommend you do the same. Angry or distracted motorists are the last thing you want to worry about when learning a new sport. My first loop started in town, climbed over 500 feet towards the mountains in the first 6 miles, and ended with a fast 4-mile descent back to the park I started at. The scenery was beautiful, and I was quickly immersed in the ebb and flow of the trail. I barely felt any of the climbs on the Helios, and being so used to a heavier mountain bike, it all felt so smooth. Everything except when I'd hit that occasional crack or rock. Another adjustment was getting used to the clipless pedals. On my mountain bike, I use flat pedals, so this was probably a bigger adjustment than the bike itself. Thankfully, I didn't need to clip in and out very often because I'm definitely still getting used to that part. I realized right away that while 10 miles on a mountain bike might be a pretty solid ride, the road bike eats 10-mile sections in easily under an hour. Before I knew it, the ride was over. Now for a little roadie culture. Espresso. Getting out of my first ride was a blast. It was so beautiful and really easy to just be on the bike, pedaling away. I gotta say, I was a little skeptical about how biking could be fun without jumps, berms, and some downhill sections, but I was pleasantly surprised. I can see now how the sheer speed and efficiency of these bikes can be addicting. And as fun as a leisurely recreational ride was, I knew I wanted to grow more comfortable riding through town and eventually participate in group rides and commuting. But before I rush into that and make a fool of myself, or worse, get hurt, I thought I'd do a bit of research on basic road cycling safety and etiquette. Through my experience as a mountain biker, I already knew to ride with the flow of traffic and obey all street signs and road markings, just like a car. The article also pointed out the importance of communication with other riders, pedestrians, and drivers. One of the best ways to do this is with hand signals. Turns out, there are commonly accepted signals for not just turning and stopping, but also slowing down, giving way, and alerting fellow cyclists of road hazards. My research also pointed out that even with proper communication and following all the traffic laws, there's a good chance that drivers still won't notice you. That's why it's essential to have your head on a swivel, always be aware of your surroundings, and ride in a predictable and safe manner. Equipped with this new knowledge, I felt ready to take my road biking to the streets. That's right, I'm setting out for my first commute to work. The first part of the commute was relatively straightforward and mostly through neighborhoods. I did my best to stay visible, predictable, and follow the rules of the road. The second half of my commute got a little busier and I needed to stop a little more often. On the return journey, it was hotter and I was tired after a long day. About a mile or two from home, however, I had my first clip conundrum. Stopping at a roundabout, I wasn't sure if a driver would stop to let me cross. I attempted to unclip, but my brain was saying something different. Just put your foot down. The miscommunication between body and brain sent me to the pavement in a slow motion topple. Oh, I knew what happened. Thankfully, I walked away with just a few cuts and bruises and was glad to have what I knew would eventually happen behind me. Had to happen at some point. Thank you. Diving into the sport of road cycling has been such a fun experience and has really opened my eyes to the sport of cycling in general. If you're on the fence about whether or not you should try road cycling, then take this as a personal invitation. I think you'll be surprised of just how fun it really is. And speaking of fun, if you have any other ideas of videos you'd like to see me make with the Helios, please let me know in the comments. And after you do that, get on whatever bike you have, get out on the trails, and get ripping.